How we doing, lads? I don't know how well this one's gonna go. I am still pretty sick, but I do have a bottle of water next to me. So if there are awkward pauses, that'll just be me taking a drink, hopefully, just to subdue some coughing. So I'll be my voice quality won't be as good as normal. It does seem to be subsiding a bit, so that's all right. But yeah, for the most part, I'll be a bit croaky, a bit sore, and a bit coffee if I don't catch it with the water bottle. But apart from that, that'll sort of be it. Anyway, so we'll just hop straight into it. So today I wanted to start touching on something called hammerless cannons. So they are a bit deceiving with that terminology because they do still use a hammer. You can't really get away with not using a hammer. I guess with a worm that's okay, but yeah. Anyway, so basically what a hammerless cannon does is you actually pulse one side of the power once, other side of the power once, and then you'll pulse the entire power together. That's personally how I do it. You'll just go 1, 2, and then you'll pulse it all together, and then you'll drop your hammer. So basically, there's two sort of ways you can split it up. Actually, we won't really talk about that now, or do I? I don't know. I haven't actually made a hammerless from scratch in a while. I am still using a hammerless, but mostly it's like I'm just using the same thing over and over, so it might just be a little bit hard for me just to get used to it again, but it shouldn't be too bad. So basically, we're going to talk about physical separation first. So physical separation can refer to a couple things. Basically, it's not doing anything fancy. What you're actually going to be doing is physically separating the TNT from your powers and your hammer using methods like trapdoors, or you can even just drop it in. And if you have like the power delayed enough, then of course it'll just drop in fine. But in the case where we're using trapdoors or something, you just need to be very, very careful about how late your hammer is. Because with hammerlesses, they can be very, very tight on timings when you are using physical separation. So they can be really quite hard to time out initially while you are getting the hang of it. But once you do 1 or 2, it's a lot easier. So anyway, I guess we'll just sort of start getting into the framework of one, I guess. So what we'll start with is a fairly standard booster separation. There is a couple ways to do it. Split Blade's got his own like double barrel setup. I've got my own personal setup that I do hammerlesses with. Again, it is down to personal preference. I'm going to try and use his maybe in this video or next video because that's like the most common setup apart from render queue, but I won't cover render queue today. So his setup's the most common setup. I use a very, very off-meta setup that's actually a lot more efficient. So I'll get into that first. That's the one that I'm comfortable talking about. But we'll worry about his in a later video, so you can sort of see the differences. But anyway, basically we'll get straight into it then. So over here we'll just start. So it's going to be a fairly similar booster setup to what we normally have. And of course we do want to prepare. So what we'll do first is we'll probably just make this a 255 again, maybe a 255 2 sec or 2.4 sec side counter. So that's why I've gone with a hammerless here, so it's much faster to build. And of course, if we want to do 255 from the, is that my 3 sec? No, that's my 2 sec. From my 3 sec video, I sort of talked about the hammer ratio, and that is sitting at 300 for 256 sand. So of course, if you want to get 300 pieces of TNT out, you can do 150 on both sides. So you get 150 per power, and then you'll get 150 per power, and then you'll get 300 total when it does double pulse. So basically what we'll do is we'll sort of plan that out. So 15 long and by 10 high, say, is a fairly round and nice number to work with. So what we'll want here is we'll want about 10 blocks, 15 blocks long. So we want this. This is going to be where we're dropping our hammer and our power. So 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's going to be that long. And then we'll just wire up the boosters for that. So what we'll do is we'll just go 2, 3, 4, and then we'll just go observer. And then I think we need one more booster, 3, 4, and then here we can just do our ladders. I think with my hammerless I was able to get away with a bit of a different setup, but I do kind of want to make like a new style of hammerless here, say. Well, not so much new style, but like different to the one that I already made. Because if I was doing the same one as before, then it wouldn't really be teaching anyone anything. So what we'll do is we've sort of got this set up now. So we'll just do all the framework underneath. So again, it looks like a very normal setup. The biggest difference that you'll notice with this is we're actually going to be double pulsing these boosters. So we'll be pulsing them once early to get the whatchamacallit out, the power out, and then after we've got the power out, we'll be pulsing it again to get the hammer out. So if we go move one up, I think that's about the high we want. So yeah, basically what's going to happen is our power is going to fall in, hit the trapdoors, or we might be able to get away with whatchamacallit queuing. We might be able to get away with just dropping it to say dropping it and using gravity to separate it. 100% sure how well that's going to work, if it's too tight or not, but yeah, we might need to go with trapdoors as well. We'll just have to see. In this case here, my 1.6 sec hammerless used the standard 0 to 6.59 timings. This one here, I do want to try a different timing setup, so I might be going with 0, I think it's 0 to like, might be 7, 10, so we'll actually get one more tick out of our hammer, and I think it'll give us a tiny bit more range, but it's like on the flip side of it, I think it might be a tiny bit more TNT. I actually don't know, to be honest. So I'm kind of tempted to just wing it and just hope for the best, and then we'll adjust the hammer ratio accordingly. Because well, I haven't really planned this out particularly well, and I'm not really in the mood to with this fucking cold. So yeah. Anyway, we'll just go. And of course, it's going to be very important here that we do have that covering over the top of the TNT here, because when we are using a hammerless, our hammer / power is always going to be double pulsing. Every shot we do, it's going to double pulse, as will these dispensers. So it's going to be very important for us to have this cover here. Specifically with physical separation, it doesn't occur for render queuing, but yeah. Anyway, so we'll just get all this wired up, and again, we'll just use our observer method there. Okay, so now to be honest, I'm not sure the direction that I really want to go with, because like on the one hand that I want to do it my way, but on the other hand I do want to show other people other ways to wire this. What I might do here is I might just go with the way that I set up my hammerlesses, to be honest, and then in the next video I'll sort of have a look at Split's cannon, and I'll sort of go through the way he does it, I guess. Because yeah, again, it's like I sort of like taught myself how to do a hammerless, so I came up with this really off meta way of doing it, that worked out really well, because I had no idea how other people did it at the time, and that's sort of like the only method I know now, which is kind of funny. But anyway else, I guess I'll just go with my method, and I'll sort of talk about what I'm doing as I go along. So what we'll do is, I'm just going to put a rail here. I'll explain why in a second. So, the way, Jesus. So the way that I did my hammerless is I really abused observers. So I used observers very heavily in mine, in my 1.6. So I'll sort of show you guys how I set up, how I time out my power and my hammer. Because again, it's gonna be different for everyone. Again, this is how I do it though. This was, I think this was just me experimenting with observers, and I found this method here. So basically, the way that I'm timing out my hammer is I'm actually using the pulse length of the cannon to time it out. So what I mean by that is basically, because observers are pulsing when they detect changes, what I'm actually doing is I am inputting a certain pulse length through the cannon that the observer is going to be picking up. So basically what I mean by that is, say if we have 7 redstone ticks here, this is a 7-tick pulse extender, you should all be familiar with this. Basically what I'm doing is I'm using the signal turning on to power this once, and because again it's a hammerless, we want to power our power twice, then I'm also using the off signal to turn it off. And because this is a 7-tick pulse extender, it's going to turn on at it's going to be turning on at 4. So it'll pulse at 4, extend to here plus 3 ticks, and it'll take so it'll go off at 4. It'll start up at 4 and then turn off at 11, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's a bit hard to explain, but basically, this takes 4 ticks to power up, and then 3 ticks later this goes. So it powers at 4, and then 3 ticks later at 7, it will, it'll power this block again, and then it'll take 4 ticks to unpower. So at 8 it unpowers. And then, since this is a 3-tick repeater here, at 11, this block will unpower, and that'll turn that off. So basically what that's going to look like is, it'll look like this. So you can see there that, okay, yeah, it's a bit shitty, it's a bit hard to see, because what it's actually doing there is it's actually picking up the differences in the pulse strength in here as well. So it's actually detecting when those are a different value, but if we just put it through a repeater, it should be fine. Yeah, you can see there, it goes on, off. Pretty simple. And basically, this is my pulse extender here, so I actually run my clock through this. So I have my entire cannon timed off this delay here. This is actually pretty universal for most hammerlesses. You should be able to get away with this for any setup that you do. Again, there are other ways of doing it, and of course you will need to do another way if you're using like a game ticked hammer or something. If you got like 1 power on game ticks, or if you got your hammer on game ticks, you'll need, of course, like a bit of a different approach of doing it. But for the most part, this right here works absolutely fine. Now, of course, this is going to be powering twice, so we need to sort of come up with a one-way gate now. So if we were to put 2 observers here, and we say this is power 1, and this is power 2, of course, these 2 observers are going to power in sync. Now, we don't want that. We want one to go off first, second one to go off second, and then we want them both to turn off simultaneously. So basically, we need like a little one-way pulse extender. I'm just going to try and remember how I did this off the top of my head. Something like, oh god. So I know I need it one way. So if I go glass, I think it was something like this. And then I had like a 2-tick pulse extender there. I think it was something like that. So basically what'll happen is, let's put that there, and then I think it was, or it might have been off the bottom, to be honest. Was it there? And there? I'm just going to put a lamp there just to see. It was something like that. But yeah, basically what's going to happen is when this gets powered, it's going to instantly... No, that's not right. I think it's like that. I think that's it. So basically, redstone can't go up transparent can't go down transparent blocks, but it can go up transparent blocks. So what's going to happen is the pulse is going to come in to the into this block here, and of course this one's going to get powered first. Now it's not going to power this one on this side here because of course it can't go down this glass block here. So it needs to wait for it to is that going to repeat a lock? No, I don't think it will actually. So yeah, the signal needs to wait for it to power. It needs to wait for it to power this block here before this lamp gets powered. And basically, after the signal goes 2 ticks later through this repeater here, then when this repeater is powered, it powers this top stretch again, keeping that powered until the signal turns back off. It's a bit hard to explain. I'll sort of rig it up and show you what it looks like. Hopefully this works. Hopefully I've got the setup right. Okay, yep, sweet. So I'll just set it up again. This is a very, very universal setup as well, by the way. I'll show you why it's so good in a second. But there, yeah, you can see that this one's powering first. 2 ticks later, this one's powering, and then because this circuit runs back over the top and it keeps this block here powered, they both turn off simultaneously because they're both going through that 2 tick pulse extender. So this one's going off at 0, this one's going off at 2, and then they're both going off simultaneously at 9. So basically what we can do from here is, and the reason why I love this setup so much is because if you're using trapdoor queuing, your trapdoors need to be separated by the amount of ticks between your power and your hammer, basically. So you want it to pulse right as the power drops in, and then 7 ticks later, right as the hammer finishes dropping in. Say if we're using 0 to 6.59. So it's actually perfect. So what we can actually do from here is if we time this right, because this is a 7 tick pulse, we can just run some repeaters off the side here. And what we can do again is we can just use an observer, because we're not exceeding that 7 tick pulse in here. It's staying as a 7 tick pulse. And basically what we can do there is we can just put a trapdoor there. And then when we power that now, so let's say the power drops in, and then the hammer drops in 7 ticks later. So you can see there that is double pulsing at 7 ticks. And again, what we can also use this for is the boosters as well. So the second that the trapdoors open and close, we want our first booster to be exploding pretty much. So our first booster will go off right after these trapdoors open, and everything goes forwards. And then basically right after the trapdoors open again, your second booster will go off as well. So you can use these, you can use the pulse extender from your clock here to time out so much more of your cannon. And the reason why I love this pulse extender so much and this setup here so much is the fact that this is configurable. So if I wanted to use a 5 tick hammer, I can take that back to 5 ticks there. There is a maximum speed to how fast you can do trapdoor queuing and physical separation, and the fastest that I found I could do physical separation was 7 redstone ticks. So basically what that means is there is a hard limit. The earliest you can possibly have your hammer going off, as far as I know, with physical separation, so this excludes render queuing, with physical separation is 7 redstone ticks. So that's why I want to go to 8 redstone ticks specifically for this hammerless. Because again, if you need if you want to be physically separating everything, you of course need that time for the power to drop out of the way of the hammer, so the shots don't get mixed up in the middle. So the slowest or the fastest we can possibly have our hammer, as far as I'm aware, is 7 redstone ticks. So for example here, if we have 5 redstone ticks for the pulse extender and for the hammer, because that will be dictating the hammer timing there, we can't use physical separation. So this would still work for, say, a cannon using render queuing, but it's not going to work for a cannon. Is that working properly? I don't think it is. Oh no, it's still fine. Yeah, that's all sweet. But then again, if we go back to 8 ticks, now 8 ticks will be fine for a cannon or a hammerless cannon using physical separation. You can see here that this setup here all still works off 8 ticks as well, and that's why I love this setup here so much for timing out your your hammerless. Even just this makes your powering so much nicer. Just this tiny little pulse extender here, and then you just basically you can just take the signal straight up from, I think it's like there and there or something. You just take your signal straight up into your hammer, pretty much. So you'll just have that under your hammer. But basically the other cool thing about this setup here is the fact that this repeater here, because this is a 2-tick pulse extender, so one side's going off 2 redstone ticks before the other side, and then it's like latching over and keeping itself on for like 2 more redstone ticks. So that little repeater there, that's going to be changing the amount of ticks between your powers. So if we say set that to 4 ticks there, it's going to keep this 8 redstone tick pulse length, but now we've got 4 redstone ticks between powers. So what's basically going to be is it's going to be chat. So your first power is going to go off at 0, your second power is going to go off at 4, and then 8 ticks later they're both going to go off. So your timer is going to look like 0, 4, 12. So if we fire that again, you can see it's much slower, but it's still all working in sync. So this is, again, you can see there's trapdoors going off with it too. And yeah, that's sort of pretty much all I want to cover for this video. This is, no matter what anyone says, I reckon this is the best way to set up actually timing out your hammerless, regardless of whether you are doing render queue or physical separation. I personally think this just works absolutely beautifully for timing out your hammerless, because this you can just shove in your pulse extender, so this gets tucked away in your pulse extender, and this, if we just go, this is my 1.6 sec hammerless, or one of the versions of it. You can see there that I just have that pulse extender circuit there just shoved on top, and then of course it just powers up the sides just like that. And then yeah, that's that 7-tick pulse extender. So that's my hammer timings right there, tucked in there. And then that is my 2-tick pulse extender for separately timing the hammer and the power. And then what I'm basically doing is I'm feeding that pulse through the boosters here. So it's double pulsing these boosters with that 7-tick. So it's what the first booster here is going to be going off at 4, 5. And then it's going to be pulsing again 7 ticks later, so it's going to be going off at 12. So it'll be going off at 5, 12, and then because these are all fed off observers, they're all going to go one after the other. Again, there's a observer here. This is the circuit that times out my trapdoors, so that actually wraps around the back there and powers my trapdoors. Again, I'm just using the double pulsing purely from this pulse extender. So yeah, if you wanna wire up a hammerless, I would definitely recommend using this setup here, where you time everything off your pulse extender, or your pulse extender from when you first fire the cannon, and using this little clock here to separately time your powers. This is definitely where I'd start doing a hammerless. It's just going to be a very, very clean setup if you do it this way, because again, all you're basically doing is just abusing observers to get your hammer and your powers timed correctly. That'll sort of do it for this episode. It's been a bit of a grind, and my voice is starting to hurt, and it's still a bit shaky. So I'll stop that here, and I guess we'll continue tomorrow, provided that my voice is still somewhat intact. So I'll see you all in the next video.